Welcome to episode 28 of the Landlady Boss podcast. I'm here with a special visitor today, Emily Duplessis. She's also known as the Rental Rookie on her Instagram account. And she is a mother of three who used to be a school teacher who retired or quit her full-time job to do real estate investing full-time. She has a different mix of rentals in her portfolio, but I'm going to let her kind of explain what she has. Thank you so much for coming. Hi, Emily. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat all things real estate.
Yes, I love it. I love following you on Instagram, and you have such interesting content. I just knew we had to get you on the podcast. I think your story is so inspiring, especially to so many people that maybe have that dream of staying home with their children or quitting their job full time. And so I think that you'll have a lot of interesting content for people, hopefully helping them to achieve their dreams too.
Yeah, I hope so. It always is a big part of what I do is just trying to give back and inspire people because I definitely didn't think I could do it. And so I hope to inspire others to just see like anyone can do it.
That is fun. I feel the same way because I just thought I was a stay-at-home mom too. I have 5 children, and
Oh my.
yeah, so I have 4 boys and a girl, and stayed home for many, many years with them, and got started 5 years ago. Going, there has to be another way. There has to be a way my husband could maybe retire earlier. Or we could have a little bit more family time, and so that's when I started. For the same reasons, I think, so I could have more time with my family. So I think that's a wonderful motivation. So tell me, how did you get started initially?
Yeah, it's really funny because I grew up in a family of teachers. Everybody, siblings, their spouses, cousins. I mean, we all were teachers. I went that direction also. And I married a finance guy. So he's always been kind of the odd guy in the sense of he doesn't always fit in with all of the teacher talk. So that was his world. Finance was his world. And shortly after we got married, back in 2010, now we were married right out of college, like a year after college. So like 23, we were married. And we just were settled and starting to think for the future and what we wanted the future to look like, and just really started early having conversations about what we wanted our life to look like and then how to make that happen. And so while I was teaching, one of the things that we had always talked about was when we started a family, eventually having the option for me to stay home. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to, back then.
Right.
We wanted to know that we had the option if the time came that I would be able to, if that's kind of the path that we chose. And so we started shortly before we had children, investing and bought our first rental property. And he had to really talk me into it because I didn't understand it. I lived in the same house my whole life growing up. We didn't move. His family moved some. We didn't. His parents were in lending. So he lived in that world and I didn't. So it was really scary. I very much remember our conversations about like return on investment. What is a return on investment? Why would I go put all that money into that just to make a little bit each month? I mean, those were our conversations. So if you're out there listening to this and that resonates, like, I get it. I was there. That was me. But I stuck with it, and I stuck with learning and educating myself. And before you knew it, there we were buying a property, renovating it. And that's really the beginning of our journey.
What was your first property that you purchased?
Wow. I love that little condo. We bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo in Northern Virginia. So we were where that time. It actually was about 45 minutes from where we lived because we couldn't really afford to buy a rental where we lived in the suburban DC area. So we pretty much looked around till we found a place that we could qualify for with taxes and all of that. So it was about 45 minutes from us. It was a HUD property. So it needed some work in order to get it up to standards of what we wanted it to be for people to live in. So we did pretty much all the renovations ourselves.
Oh my goodness.
Just, pulled up our sleeves, put some sweat equity into it, and learned a lot.
Wow. And you were teaching while you were doing this.
I was actually teaching full time. I was going to get my master's also at the same time. My husband had a full-time job.
Wow.
So we were definitely busy.
That sounds like it. And what did you teach?
High school English. I was a high school
English.
Like, not math, not any of that. Stayed away from all of that. So it is really funny. I always joke that math and real estate and finance a lot of times is so black and white. And in my English classes, we lived in the gray. I mean, we were always talking about all the different things that could be going on. So it was definitely a switch.
Do you feel like teaching prepared you for real estate investing, or was English so different that you're like, no, it really didn't overlap?
The content itself, I would say, didn't necessarily, like what I was teaching in the classroom, didn't prepare me for it. But I do think just being a teacher and problem solving and, managing a classroom and managing students, and as a teacher, there is so much that goes into it that is on the plate of a teacher, just from all of the lesson planning and the discipline and, keeping up with parents and making sure you're building and fostering relationships with the kids. There's just so many things that are going on that I really do think that aspect of it prepped me for, buying real estate. And we self-managed our real estate. So there was just a lot of hats you had to wear. And
Yes.
I definitely had to do that in teaching. So I do think that prepared me.
Well, and it sounds like you were a learner, a lifelong learner. And if you were a teacher, you enjoyed learning. And you said you educated yourself. You didn't know all of this from the beginning. And I think that's a huge thing for real estate investors. You have to have a level of self-educating. Like you have to be willing to read books and watch the videos, YouTube, and just that self-education. Because I was the same way. It was just like reading anything that I could get my hands on because you have to figure it out.
Yep.
Otherwise, failure is not an option. Like you have to figure this out. And so that's where we were. We were like, how can we make this work? I'm going to find a way. So I love that you stuck with it. And obviously it was successful. At one point you decided to leave your teaching job.
Yeah, it was about 4.5 years into our journey that we had our second child at that point. And I decided first off just to take about a year off from teaching. I hadn't fully quit my job yet, but I was able and fortunate enough that my school allowed that. And so then I had time to really think about what I wanted and if I was, and honestly, it was a really hard decision. It was not something I really loved teaching. I loved my students. So it was not one of those things. I was not a disgruntled teacher ready to get out of there. I spent a lot of tears crying making that decision.
You're right.
I did, but I just knew. And now on the other side of this season of having young children, I really can say this strongly, but I just knew that time was so limited. You always have those parents say to you, it goes so fast, it goes so fast. And so I just knew we had a window of time with our kids when they were little for me to be home, for me to be able to do things with them, for us to travel. My husband's job was remote, so we could spend time and go away for a couple weeks, and we were able to do that. So yeah, we made that decision, and man, when I sent my baby boy off to kindergarten last year, I remember just being like, wow. Man, it was hard. It was so hard and it was tiring, but I am so happy I made that decision because it just goes so fast.
It's so true. My oldest is 22 and in college, and my youngest, she's 12, but it goes fast, and I am very grateful that I could. And I think that a lot of people have that hope or dream, like, I don't want to be stuck to a job all day where I can't be flexible. I can't be at my kids' events or class parties or be part of their field trips. So I completely get that, and I'm grateful that I did too. Not everyone is able to, and I always felt very grateful that I could, because it just goes fast and you can't get that time back. So I bet you loved every minute of it.
I did. It was wonderful. I did love it.
That's great. So by that time, when you decided to quit your teaching job, how many properties had you said you started one, and then 4.5 years later, so had you bought a couple more, or were you still okay?
We bought that first condo in 2012. It was like August of 2012. By the end of that year, we actually had bought another one. And so we kind of got two off the bat. And our strategy at that point, because this was back in 2012, so rates were low. We were buying properties that were undervalued. And so we were going in, we were putting in some time to renovate, get some sweat equity in there. We were able to force the appreciation. And so back then we were able to do a cash out refinance. So we were able to kind of do that strategy for a couple of years and then take that money back out and reinvest it in another property. And so that's really how we got our start. We weren't doing anything, I would say, fancy in the sense of financing, like hard money or any of private money. I mean, we were doing traditional financing, conventional loans, 20% down. And we just were making good decisions with our savings. We were making sure we were saving, and that's hard, especially now. It's really hard, but it is just another part of that commitment of reaching what you want to reach, is sacrificing a little bit on that end so that way you can, in the long term, reach your goals.
Yeah, and it definitely is hard. I mean, it's good to point that fact out. I think people think, oh, this is, yeah, I just get a rental property, it's a piece of cake, like I just get another, and it is hard work. Anyone that tells you differently is not really telling the truth, or maybe
Right.
they're in, I want to know what their secret is because it
Yes.
is a lot of work, at least initially, I feel like, until you get systems in place or a team together. I mean, you are wearing, like you said, you were self-managing and getting the properties and doing the renovations. You were wearing all of the hats. So, I mean, I think especially until you have enough net worth built up
Mm-hmm.
or, a team, that could be very overwhelming. And it's hard. But I heard someone say recently, it's hard, but guess what's hard? Being unemployed is hard. Working 3 jobs is hard. Not being with your kids is hard. They're all these things are hard. So choose your hard.
Right.
And I'm glad I chose my hard because this is the kind of hard that I like, where I do have the schedule, like you're saying. It's worth it in the end, right? You have the
Mm-hmm.
flexibility. You and your husband can go take time off. So it is hard. I
Yeah,
don't
I
want
love that. Choose your hard. That's really good.
choose your hard.
Yes,
So
that's really good. I love that. I have not heard that, but it is. Stuff is hard, and I agree. Anyone, if you are listening to this and you want to get started and you're on the fence, like, yeah, it's hard and it's going to be work, but you know what? It is worth it. And I
mhm.
always recommend to my newbie investors, like, honestly, do as much as you can because your learning curve, if you're getting in there and you're self-managing that property and you're showing the property to the tenants and you're in there doing that, it's a lot, but you are going to learn so much quicker versus
Mhm.
trying to put off that on other people, property managers. And I think there's a time and place for that for sure. But I just think there's a lot of value in learning as much as you can when you're just getting started. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail a little bit and learn about people and how they are. And that's just part
Right,
of
for
it.
sure.
It's just
Yes, and
part of
you're
it.
going to and like you said, if you can find great property managers, I mean, with at Landlady Boss, obviously our whole motto is no one can manage your properties as well as you can.
Hmm.
And if you have an amazing property manager, that's wonderful. But for most real estate investors, that's not an option. Maybe you live somewhere where there's not a lot of property managers available, or the ones that are available are not very good, or maybe you just are starting out, like you said, and you need every penny, and so you don't want to pay that 10% a month. So I just think there's so many reasons why you do end up self-managing, and that's why we try to help people have systems in place and help that self-managing not be quite so overwhelming. But
Hmm.
I like how you said that, like, just get in there,
Yeah.
figure it out, and you are going to learn so many things. And you're just going to be, in the long run, even if you do hire a property manager, I feel like you're going to know what things to look for because you've done it.
Yeah.
So you're going to know the questions to ask, the things that they need to be responsive on, or how to handle things, or why didn't you handle it this way because you've actually had the experience. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Can you
You're
tell me a little bit more about your portfolio? You have a variety
Yeah,
of different
we
properties,
do.
right?
I always say, man, we will like chair because we we have done so many. I mean, we our portfolio has had condos, we've done townhouses, we have vacation rentals, we have student rentals, we've done single family, we've done multi-units, we have syndication. So we really have just
Oh my
dabbled
gosh.
and tried a little bit of everything. And not on purpose, actually, as I sit here and look back, I'm like, we didn't actually start this journey and say we just want to try everything. But I think we were just open to opportunity and open to. I truly believe once you learn the simple process of how to find and analyze and finance and buy the property, it's a rinse and repeat process. You are not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily learning a new process for every different type. It's really the same. Some numbers might be different. You might have to ask some different questions for, condos. You need to really be looking into the association rules and that sort of thing. So there are some innuendos, but at the end of the day, the process is pretty similar. So I would say that it really was just we saw opportunity in different places and went after it.
Where were you finding most of your properties
Um,
that you ended up getting?
Most of them were I would say that I kept my eye on the markets in a lot of different areas. So we had a couple of agents who we really loved that we worked with in some different areas, but I also just had my eye on different markets that we were interested in, and I was constantly looking. Have always enjoyed that part of it. I've always enjoyed looking to see what's out there and what the market is doing. I always say, like, you really need to become a student of the market you want to invest in. Really get to know it, really get to learn it, know what the different properties are that are, coming for sale and how long they're being listed. And I can remember going and looking for vacation rentals in one of the areas. And I remember standing there talking to the agent, and I just started talking about all these different properties. And he's just like, what? How do you know all this? And I'm like, I just watch, it doesn't really take much work. We're scrolling on our phones all the time these days, take a little bit of that time and just scroll through and see what's happening in the markets you're interested in.
So you kind of come up with a comprehensive view of that market before you even buy anything, which is great. You want to know the ins and outs, the job growth, like the desirability if people are even vacationing there. So then once you kind of map that out, then you said you have realtors that you use or that you trusted that kind of knew what you're looking for. And so you were open to whatever kind of property fit in that market, it sounds like.
Yeah, and definitely fit within our goals. And I would say for anyone who's getting started, really, and I always feel like in a way it sounds cliche, like for everybody in every beginning of every journey, they're like, set your goals and, your intentions. But it really is so important. And in the end, it's going to save you time. Like knowing what that return on investment number is for you is going to save you so much time. Once you learn how to run an analysis, I mean, you can know pretty quickly, hey, that's in my, the area of the return I want, or no, it's not. And that's gone if it's not. So really kind of knowing in the beginning, like, what are you looking for a return? Knowing how much work you want to put into it, how on call do you want to be? Like, those are things in the beginning that you really have to sit down and think about, because that's going to kind of dictate what path you go on and maybe what types of properties you go after, whether you're going to only invest locally or whether you're open to investing, an hour away, 2 hours away, out of state.
I agree completely. Yeah. What are your goals? Because there are so many different types of, like you said, condos, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, multifamily, single families, commercial properties. And I do think there's a bit of like, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. And so if you don't have that kind of system in play, or you can run the numbers. That's why I love real estate, because there's no like, oh, but I really liked that front door. No, the numbers didn't make sense, move on. Like, you can know fairly quickly if you're even interested or not. And I've had different realtors to say, well, hey, maybe just come and take a look. And I'm like, no, I can already tell. I'm not going to waste my time or yours, because I can just run the numbers. So I do love that, because there's not a lot of, emotion there when you are looking at a spreadsheet.
Yes. And for newbie investors, you want to keep that emotion out. I mean, you want to keep it out because it's just going to make it a little bit harder. It's going to help or like lead you down directions of making choices you might not make if you're really just looking at the numbers. So I totally agree. That is one of the things that I actually appreciate about real estate investing, because I am very much, or I can be, a very indecisive person about a lot of things. My husband refers to me as Switzerland a lot of times because I'm just neutral on so many things. And so I love that about real estate. I can plug my numbers in a spreadsheet and I can say, like, yes, let's look more into this, or nope, not for us.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very important. And it sounds like you and your husband kind of work together as a team, and it's not like one of you doing it and the other's not supportive. It sounds like you both are on board together.
Yes, we are. From the beginning, that's kind of been our motto. And I know some people who are interested in investing, that is a barrier sometimes, is finding and getting their spouse or partner on board. And it took him a little bit of time to get me on board. I referred to my story earlier. I definitely was apprehensive about it. I was scared. I don't like to fail, so I was really nervous about that. But from the beginning, I would say we have been a team on it, and we have allowed ourselves to really lean into our strengths. So his with the finance, and he was in lending for a while. And so he really was like the finance side and making sure like all the loan stuff was always on, working well and all of that. So that was really his thing, where I was the one more so finding, analyzing, this is what we want, this is what we don't want, it meets our goals. Okay, now it's in your hands. You're going to do all the loan documents and all of that. And then, back to me for the management stuff. So we really leaned into our strengths through the whole process.
That's wonderful. I do often tell people, like, find out what you are good at and then embrace that and find those aspects of real estate investing that you can do, and then if you can't do the other things or you're not good at them, find other people that are good at those things. Like
Yeah.
you're saying, you know, you and your husband each have your strengths, and so it sounds like it plays well together. My husband's pretty hands off with the real estate investing. You know, he has his own job and
Yeah.
is very busy with that. And there's been days he's come home and I bought a house today, or I bought a multifamily. He's just used to it by now. He's like, okay. And the the flip I'm closing on today, he had never even walked through it until it was almost done. He was
Yeah.
like, you know, I still haven't even been in that house yet. I'm like, oh, well, why don't I give you a tour? But
I love that. That's awesome.
it's just not his thing. You know,
Yeah.
he's great. He'll give me feedback if he wants, but he, at the beginning, walked through some of the different properties I was doing, and it would stress him out. He would just look around and he'd go, I can't see this. I don't know how it's going to look. This is a total disaster. Like, it would just kind of stress him out. And that's okay. And so he would maybe see them later on in the process where they were a little nicer.
Yeah. Well, that
So
is
it works
part
out.
of it, is having some vision. And some people really struggle with that, you know, and that's part of it. But that is part of, if you are going to go down the path of trying to do any renovations and anything along those lines, you do have to be able to look past the not great parts
Yes.
of the property, because
Yes.
we've definitely
Yes.
walked through some before where there's no floors, or, you know, there's just junk everywhere. And yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, what variety of, I saw that you have college
Yeah.
student housing also, and vacation homes,
Yes.
correct? And then multifamilies, and so long-term rentals.
Yes.
And so, how do you balance kind of all of these different types? I mean, is there a lot of overlap in the different types of properties, or it just sounds like that could be a big, and they're all different states too, right? You
We
have them
do.
all
Yeah.
over.
We have
It's
invested in
amazing.
various states over the time. Yeah. I mean, we are just like, we've done it and learned and made mistakes and figured out along the way what we like and what we don't like. And so so with our vacation rentals, because they are located in vacation towns, so they aren't necessarily like a short-term Airbnb that we just have in a city or a town. We own a vacation rental in the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and then we own one in Western Maryland that's on a lake, but also by a ski resort. So there
Oh,
are
nice.
property management companies on the ground there. So if you ever gone to any kind of destination place and you've looked through like a beach and you look through a property management company, those two we have with property management, because there is so much upkeep and because there's rotating people. Like our beach property is rented typically from March until November every week, people in and out.
Wow.
So that's not something we could do on top of
Right,
the
right.
schedule.
Well, I was wondering how
Yes.
you do
Oh,
that.
goodness, no. Nope. So those ones, in that sense, are hands off in the management side of it, which has been really nice. We've enjoyed that process, and we get to use them. One of them is only 2 hours away, so we get to actually go and use it, and it's really
Ooh,
become a
that's
place
nice.
for our extended family to come and be together. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Then student housing, I'm
Yes.
sure that has its own challenges.
That's its own one. I'll say that. And it's funny, those are typically our most needy tenants. But when you think about it, these are kids who have lived at home forever and they're getting out on their own and all of it is new. And so they need a little bit more hand holding, for sure. Have some really silly questions. Sometimes my husband will look at me and be like, did they really just call about that?
Did they ask that?
Yes.
That's what my sister Rachel, predominantly her portfolio is in student housing out in
Yes.
Idaho. So she has lots of stories and experience with the student housing aspect, but it is kind of a different animal.
It is very different. It is very different. And we have had really great years and we have had some not so great years. But I will say in our town, it is a bit of a more lucrative way to go. The properties that we own, if we were to just take them and rent them to a family, we would not make what we make on them as student rentals. And so it
Because
definitely,
you can rent out individual rooms. Is that how you do? Okay.
yeah, our leases for that are by per student per semester. And so, you have 4 students paying an amount each semester. And so versus, one family paying one amount for an entire, per month for the year. So we definitely are able to make more, but it definitely comes with more work.
Yeah, that sounds like it. But I like how there's flexibility there because I do feel like sometimes real estate investors will get in like one lane and they'll
Mm-hmm.
think like, oh, well, this is what I know and this is what I've got to do. And I just know single family homes. And but to be flexible, like you're saying, and say, hey, maybe take a single family home. And if your market is right for it, oh, rent it out by the rooms and you can
Mm-hmm.
make more. Or I feel like being flexible is a really good way to adapt when the market changes so you don't get stuck going, I don't know what to
Right.
do, and now everything's changed, and I'm losing money, and I've failed.
Right.
So being flexible, I think that's
I think
fantastic.
that's important also. Yeah, because when you get into this, you have to know that things are going to change, especially if you're in the long term, if your goal is to hold things long term. Markets are going to shift, areas are going to change. I mean, we've seen just with our student rentals, numbers at the school be high and then be, a couple years they're a little bit lower and it's a little bit harder to get the students in there and then they, come back up again. And so things can really ebb and flow. So knowing that going into it, I think is really that knowledge is going to save you a lot of headaches, knowing like, hey, this is a journey and I'm going to be in it for a while and there's going to be good months and good years and there's going to be times when things are going to happen because things will
Hmm.
happen. That's what I always tell people if you're getting into this. Like stuff will happen. I don't ever want to
Exactly.
sugarcoat it or anything like there are going to be crazy things that are going to happen and that's just part of it. So just, have your reserves,
Hmm.
have your paperwork, all of that stuff. Like, just make sure you have some of that stuff in order.
I was going to say, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give real estate investors starting out? Would that be what it would be? Have reserves, have a buffer.
Yes, I would say after the last couple of years with a few of our things that have happened, really having reserves and having cash is going to save so much, like in terms of headaches and
Hmm.
just really bad times. So, never, I always tell people don't get into it and like put all of your money into it and have nothing. That is just setting
Hmm.
yourself up for failure. Things are going to happen and you need to be prepared for that. And so, really making sure that you have some reserves and some cash to, what if it's vacant for a couple of months? Or, what if one of your CapEx items, your roof, or, you have plumbing issues and that's or HVAC system and that's
Hmm.
$5,000 and there goes your cash flow for a year. So really making sure that you have reserves and that you are making sure you're saving for, CapEx, capital expenditure items that are going to come if you're going to hold on to things for a long time. It's just going to help you in terms of just not losing a year's worth of cash flow in a day.
Right. I think that's a big misconception people have with real estate investing. They think, oh, well, I saw a guru tell me I can get into it without any of my own money. And that may be for certain types of financing or forming the deal a certain way, but not having a dime to your name to be able to have a buffer is a mistake. And when they say you don't need any of your own money, I go, well,
You're probably
that
going to
makes
need
me
some of your own
nervous for
money.
your, you might have a sewer system go out like we
Right.
had one time, or,
Right.
the water heater goes, or the furnace. I mean, you have to have a buffer and
Yes.
to sleep at night. So,
I agree. Yeah. And you don't know. And a lot of times those things are so out of your control. I remember one property, the whole town was redoing their whole sewer system. And so you got a
oh
letter
no.
and you had to tap into it and it had to be a certain type of pot. I mean, and it was a couple grand just because we had to. There was, they were going to condemn your house if you didn't do what they said.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, you just never know.
You
You just,
just never know. It's always an adventure. That's what I think. So it's, you got to be prepared for anything and just kind of be flexible. I think that's really a good point that you're
yeah. Well,
making.
and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier because I'm like sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, that stuff sounded all really like negative. Like, and we don't say it to be negative. I always want people to know the truth and to not come in, thinking it's all going to be roses. But I think it gets back to what we were talking about with really determining your why and why are you getting into this. And when those things are happening, and it's really easy to spiral into the negative of all the bad things because I also have learned that it feels like when it rains, it pours with real estate. We will have
Hmm.
months where we won't have a call, we won't have anything. And then all of a sudden, for like a month or two, it's like all of them, this or this, you get a phone call about this, you get a phone call about that. So I would say that being able to not allow yourself to spiral is always just going back on like, why did I get into this in the first place? I got into this because I wanted, some financial flexibility and freedom, and I wanted time freedom, and I wanted to own my day, and I wanted to, and are those things happening? Despite
Mm-hmm.
the, storm right now, are those things happening? And you can
Mm-hmm.
lean on that in the hard times. So that's again back to that, those goals and that why. You really have to determine those and then remember those through the process.
That's so great, keeping that perspective because, yeah, when I do get a call or something happens and it's like, oh my gosh, but usually within a few minutes, it's handled and
Mm-hmm.
things are fine. And then my husband will be like, when you're stressed out like that, but you realize you have the whole day. Like, yes, that was 5 minutes of your day, or you have days at a time that you have freedom. So, I mean, yes, the bad happens, but the good balances. So it's good to point that out because I don't want it to be all gloom and doom because it
Right,
really is an amazing, otherwise you would have sold them and you would have gone back to
right,
teaching and been like, I'm not going to do this.
right.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what has been the biggest reward? Is it, I'm sure it's being with your family, but just kind of that freedom that you have, is that the biggest change
Yeah.
that you've seen from real estate investing?
Yeah. I would say it has been certainly the freedom that it has offered us just over the course of, I guess, 12 years we've been doing this, which is kind of hard to believe. It's allowed
Wow.
us to, I think it's also pushed us out of our comfort zone at times and allowed us to grow individually and grow together. And so I also think that that's been a really good part of the process. At times it's been difficult. At times we have had to certainly troubleshoot things. And I think that in a way it's allowed us to just continue to with my husband and I form our team and, get through hard things together when things have happened. And has definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone in ways that teaching was very much my comfort zone. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
very much. So this has pushed me out of it. And I am grateful for that because generally I think we as people don't really like to get out of our comfort zones. And
That's true. I
so,
do think real estate investing takes you and then puts you out of your comfort zone in so many different areas, maybe things that you didn't even realize that you were going to try, and then you try them
mhm,
and realize, oh, I can do this. And I mean, I do like that it pushes you and
mhm.
challenges you.
And I think all of those things in the whole journey and the whole process, what I always share is that all of that education that you're doing, those podcasts that you're listening to, the books that you're reading, the courses that you're taking, the properties that you're getting out and looking at, all of that is building your knowledge base, but it's also building your confidence as an investor. So all of those things that are happening, when you look at them individually, and some of the things might be really great, and individually some of the things might be really bad. But when we collectively look at them, I mean, the confidence that you're building through that process as an investor is just only going to help you as you continue to go down your investing journey. So, making sure you can look at things collectively and not try to isolate each incident, especially the not so
Yes.
good ones. It builds your confidence. And when you're just getting started and you're a newbie, and if you were like me and had no idea about any of it, I mean, you felt like an imposter. You felt like, I don't know, can I do this? What are people going to think? They know I'm a teacher. What's everybody going to say? Like, getting a teaching job in Western Pennsylvania is a really hard thing, and I'm just going to up and leave mine. So, you know, there's a lot of that. So that confidence is really big.
Yeah, and I do think, like you mentioned, getting training or education, how we talked before, and you do offer some courses if people are interested on how to get started. Do you want to talk a little bit about what
Yeah,
you offer?
currently we have our financing course. It's our financing avenues for buy and hold investors, and it is a course that solely focuses on the financing aspect of it. So what I've learned in working with newbie investors all these years is really the two main things are they don't know what or how to start, and the financing piece is really overwhelming and confusing and scary. So this course breaks down 7 different types of ways to finance property, from just traditional conventional financing, partnerships, seller financing, and there's 7 of them total that we break down. We give real life experiences of the ones we've used, and so that is out and available right now. And in 2025, we are going to be relaunching our full Zero to Property course, which is a start to finish from the beginning of the why and the setting the goals. And it literally takes you through finding how to find properties, how to become that student of your market, how to analyze deals, how to negotiate, how to be putting together a really strong offer, how to manage your property. So it's the entire thing in one package. And so that will be coming out in 2025.
Oh, fantastic. See, you're still teaching, right? You're
Well,
still
I know, and I do. And like I said, that's always been my thing. I loved it. So it's just a different way of doing it.
fantastic. And where can people find you if they want to find
Yeah,
more
if you want to
information or follow
find
you?
more, yeah, go ahead and you can go to Instagram. I'm at Rental Rookie. Or if you want to find more about the courses, you can go to zerotoproperty.com.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening, informative. I just love hearing your story and how it's transformed your family's life. It's transformed my family's life. So it's been really great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And if you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe and share. And if you have comments or topic ideas or questions, feel free to email us at landladybosses@gmail.com. And remember, nobody can manage your properties as well as you.